Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast this week is Alex Lowe. Now, Alex is, well, maybe his face as we see it now is less familiar, but he is the man behind comedy creations, Clinton Baptiste, and one of my favourites, Barry from Watford. Alex, welcome to the Godcast. How are you doing?
Oh, all right. Thanks. Great to be here. Thanks for asking me. Appreciate it.
You're holed up in sunny Salford this morning with the snow. Is that right?
Yes, we're in a Premier Inn. I spend my life in Premier Inns on this tour, which I don't mind. You know, I always think there's a lot of people always say, "Oh, it must be awful going around all these endless hotels, touring all the time." And I think, what's not to like about it? You know, there's a nice bed, the telly's there. You don't have to clean anything. Breakfast is made. I love it.
Good breakfast this morning.
Well, as you can hear, I've got a bit of a funny. This is interesting for everyone, isn't it? I've got a bit of a chest after 48 shows. I'm absolutely exhausted, and so I'm trying my best not to have too much dairy. I'm trying to be good, and also I've lost a bit of weight on this tour, and I'm trying to not have red meat. I don't think I've had a single sausage in in 48 hotels. You know, so I'm trying to be good. So I had the bare minimum.
There's the headline right there, Alex. He's not had a single sausage on this tour.
Not one sausage. No.
So tonight of all nights, Alex, it's World Cup quarter-final night, isn't it, in Salford? And you happen to be on at the Lowry there. Are you slightly concerned you may play second fiddle to the World Cup?
Well, there is that. I mean, that's been throughout the World Cup. We've had some huge, you know, we played Shepherd's Bush Empire, and England were playing that night. We've got this one tonight for our final show on the tour, and I'm going to have the laptop up in the dressing room. But I think what happens is, honestly, people do still turn up, and I think if people have paid for tickets, they go, well, I'm not going to miss that. So yeah, thankfully so far everyone seems to have turned up for those, you know, during those England matches. Maybe tonight is different. It's the quarter-final. Who knows?
Have you enjoyed this tour, Alex? Is it you know, do you you know, your gravitas to fame and stardom is you know, you're an age similar vintage to myself, I would guess, and you're doing you know, you're really enjoying the success at the moment. Are you playing to sold out crowds? How's it been?
I've got to say, you know, honestly, it's such a delight to speak to you and to be asked to speak on things like podcasts, which increasingly happens nowadays. Because quite honestly, I've spent most of my career with no one giving two hoots what I'm doing and all the rest. I think lots of people, you know, I'm a sort of jobbing actor. I've never had to do anything else, thank goodness. But I was a child actor. And then I did a terrible degree at Leicester Polytechnic in performing arts, which was just, you know, horrifically underfunded, but that somehow taught us some sort of self-preservation and, you know, sort of getting down and dirty and getting on with things without expecting anything to happen from it. And so after years of, you know, performing and being the jack of all trades and writing comedy and doing stand-up and being a straight actor and all the rest of it, to arrive in my 50s and people want to come and see what I'm doing is great. I can't pretend it's nothing to do with Peter Kay and Phoenix Nights. So there is that. But I mean, it's really gratifying. Sometimes, you know, people say, oh, I've been following your career for a while. And I think, well, I wish someone had let me know during the darker days when I didn't know anyone was interested. So yeah, I love it. That's a long answer to a short question. I love it. You know, it's so gratifying. This is sort of my third UK tour, and hopefully I have, you know, people will turn up for more. But to turn up in Salford and these places, and gosh, right up north in Barrow in Furness, and in Scotland, and to think, you know, there's this lad from Pinner in northwest London. And they've come to see me, you know, I really love that. It's delightful.
I noticed that you played Blackpool Tower just a week or two ago, and there's lots of venues in Blackpool. What was, first of all, did you play in the Circus Arena there, or was it in the ballroom? Whereabouts was the gig?
I tell you what, it's a fairly new place, and it's called Floor 5, I think.
Okay.
The 5th floor. And now this is going to be controversial, but we've played there before. We pack it out. I'm delighted with the audience that come, but there's a few things wrong with it. There's no comms, there's no communication between backstage and the lighting box. I also had people complaining that it's really understaffed where we were. I don't know whether it was because on a Sunday, I don't know, but there was no one around. It was freezing cold. There's a lot of sort of agency staff there. The technical people don't work for the Blackpool Tower, it seems.
Yeah.
And people have been saying that they had trouble even finding how to get into the venue. People were late. And that is something I have to say I've found about some places up and down the country. It seems to me at the moment, everything is being done on a skeleton staff. There's somewhere like Blackpool Tower. I'm thrilled to go there. It's a major, landmark in Britain. And you turn up and it's, it needs a bit of work doing to it.
Yeah.
There's no one around. It's freezing cold. It's a bit like, do you want people to come into this venue or not? So I found that a bit upsetting. And I would have, and they were a lovely audience, and they were very warm and as they always are in the Northwest, I have to say. But I did feel sorry for people who had to complain that they couldn't even find their way into the venue. So I'm slightly less pleased with Blackpool Tower than I am.
Oh dear. I'm sorry I asked now.
No. Well, I tell you what is lovely, and I recommend it to anyone. Lytham St Anne's down the road.
Oh yeah. Yeah, lovely.
If I could only get enough money from my touring to buy a flat or something, I would happily, because all my gigs playing Clinton Baptiste are up in the Northwest, it seems. That if I could have a base in somewhere like Lytham and go out from there, it would be great. I'm really in love with that place.
But I guess Clinton played on the weaknesses of the tower, did it? A man of your skill and dexterity. It didn't go unnoticed in the act, I would guess.
No, well, I've got to be honest with you. It's with this show, there's me and Lewis MacLeod playing Ramon, who is, of course, a brilliant mimic. What we tend to do is, because we're getting so old now, we have 90 minutes of material to remember, and deviating from it is not always the option. I think on my own, there's other stuff I would have done, but these things are like, you're on stage, you've got a duty to someone to sort of stick within what we've planned.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a lovely venue, and it was absolutely rammed, and people were laughing a lot. It's not their fault, so I don't want to sort of remind them.
Yeah, I went to see Blancmange in Darwin. And
wow.
And I got there before the act did. They said that the doors open at 7, and I thought there'd be a support act on, but literally there was just a guy putting the boiler on, and it did take the edge off the evening. Although the band was still fabulous.
Yeah.
Clinton, where did your love of comedy characters come from? As a younger guy, who are you really laughing at yourself?
Well, do you know what? I think about it now, there's a real divide in my family. My dad's lot are sort of East End, they're from Southeast London, and during the war there was this move, to get people into the green belt and away from. I think there was some sort of armaments factory just down the road from them, and so they were being bombed during the war, and they moved out to South Harrow in northwest London, which is sort of green belty area, and they are the real. They were sort of, my uncle played the piano. My dad was a saxophone player. And they had slightly more of a sort of artistic bent about them, whether my mum's lot are much more sort of scientists and very straight-laced in that department. So when I think now, my dear old dad, there was a lot of store put by jokes and comedy. And, I always remember, I would think now with a great affection, how he would encourage me to enter caption contests. I was a big Queen's Park Rangers fan, and in the programme they'd have what's the caption here? And it'd be Stan Bowles or one of these QPR players, and I would and I always kind of thought, I don't think my mum probably there was a load of nonsense, but my dad would be like, no, what a skill to be able to write a joke here, So that lot, I remember my nan. I always remember distinctly when Porridge came out on BBC One. Her saying, "Oh, she loved Ronnie Barker. Let's watch that." And of course, Ronnie Barker. To answer your question, what a fantastic! I mean, part of me genuinely can't believe that Fletcher was not a real person.
Yeah.
Do you know that idea?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so three-dimensional. And maybe it's because it was my age and I sort of grew up with it and it feels so real and visceral. But Fletcher, Ronnie Barker was I was a huge fan of Ronnie Barker. I love the two Ronnies. Mike Yarwood, the impressionist. I remember my dad took us to see him at the Winter Gardens in Bournemouth.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, I mean, to this day, I think it was so simple. It wasn't all singing or dancing. He had a little box of hats and scarves and a a Harold Wilson pipe.
Yeah.
And the simplicity of, they were, I mean, I say it wasn't all singing and dancing. I think there were some sort of Tiller girls or something in the first half and some sort of magic act or something. And the second half was this tour de force of reaching into this box, so simple. And it was absolutely captivating, the simplicity of it. And just putting on, a hat or a scarf or whatever and morphing into these characters. And so I think those were the main ones, and then as I got into my early teens, people like Rick and Aid, and Elton, that sort of alternative thing, which absolutely blew my head off. And to this day, I think people like Harry Hill, I have such admiration for the slightly surreal side of comedy, which I don't do. I can't do it. I'm much more bread and butter, end of the pier. Here's the setup. Here's the punchline. It's all logical. It's a sort of slight twist on something. But that sort of thing, I really like when it's done really well. Not just kind of surreal, and you go, well, yes, ooh, a ghost in a biscuit tin, but something that's so it's surreally logical.
Yeah.
Where you go, oh, I can see what. Yes, I've thought that is a sort of madness.
Yeah. It's lovely hear you talking like that. I mean, I'm a guy that was brought up on summer seasons, and
Yes.
I remember seeing the Russ Abbott show on the North Pier at Blackpool when it was twice nightly from May until November, and it was sold out. And then, I became really a huge fan of Les Dawson, seeing him in Run for Your Wife with Eric Sykes, and
absolutely.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. Just interested to know what you think about the role of the straight man in a comedy partnership, Alex. I interviewed recently Tommy Cannon, who was fascinating. Listen to him talk about his career. Do you think sometimes we underplay the skill of the stooge or the straight man in comedy?
Well, I do actually. Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, with the show we're doing at the moment, Clinton Baptiste versus Ramon. I hope I'm not giving away too many secrets, but a fantastic director, Brendan O'Hay, he directs at the Globe and what have you. And he went during rehearsals. There's a bit where Clinton, takes out these Chinese fortune cookies, which is another way of doing jokes about kind of the future and prophecies and what have you. And Lewis took a lot of convincing. He would be going, but I'm just standing here offering him the bowl. And Brendan was going, you don't understand the power in that stillness. You don't have to be running around the stage, pulling focus, mugging to the audience. That stillness. And sure enough, that's what happens on the tour. He's got this sort of straight face, stood there, rigid, like the whole thing's a very sacred ceremony. It doesn't have to be all singing, as I say, use the expression, all singing, all dancing. You don't have to have a dealy bopper and lights and a comedy bow tie. The stillness and what the other guy's playing against is every bit, a part of the scene as the jokes.
Yeah. So let's just talk about some of the characters. Barry from Watford, Alex. And I'm not blowing smoke up the proverbial. I think he's a wonderful character. I love him.
Very kind of you. Barry is a very elderly man there. And I want to thank you so much for being interested in him, you see.
That's based. I mean, he is based on all my Cockney ding dong forebears, who all spoke,
and that I saw, the sort of esophagus is sort of falling apart in the back of the throat, you see, and not having the lung capacity to finish the sentence,
But I used to do that on Steve Wright's show on Radio 2. And I think Steve Wright, he's got old Cockney family, from Southend or somewhere like that. So he kind of got that. But I mean, yeah, that's sort of supposed to be an homage to my Cockney lot.
What I love about him, Alex, is he's a character, but he's a real person. So in a similar way to the old Nan,
Yeah.
they're very relatable. And even Barry from Watford reminds me of my mum. Who's a southerner in her 80s, and comes out with faux pas and
yes, malapropisms. Yeah, that's right.
But and the carpet right sketch.
Oh yeah.
Alex, that gets me every time. I just go around shoving it in people's faces. Just watch that. You want cheering up? Just watch that. It's just.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
it's so real.
Oh well, that's good. I'm glad about that. I hope people. I mean, I sometimes think you don't. I don't know whether you. Well, you must do get older people like that now. When I was growing up, I feel like no, they weren't trying to be young. You sometimes my wife calls them 1661s, where from the back you go, look at that lovely, beautiful blonde hair, and she turns around, you think she's 16, turns around, she's 61, and dressing as, young teenagers. It was sort of, they were what they were,
And was it quite easy to run with Barry from Watford, Alex? Because were you clear? Were you determined to go with this character? Because in all intents and purposes, it's Barry from Watford. It's
yeah. Do you know what was first of all, as I say, I was much more. I've been a straight actor for many, many years, and I it's only sort of in my 40s I started doing stand up. And I had this character. It was a very deliberate attempt to do something. I felt a bit like Tootsie, Dustin Hoffman. My career was all right. It was going okay, but I really literally had to change everything. And I got Aaron Sherman, who was a prosthetic whiz, to design this face. And I had this, prosthetic face that I used to put on. As I'm getting older, I don't need it so much now. But, I used to put this thing on and turn up early for gigs. And I was sort of determined to do it because I was very naive. I thought, oh, well, it's another strand of performance. I didn't really know that many stand-up comics. I didn't really know the circuit at all. And so I would turn up early and put on my prosthetic face, and there'd be these hard-bitten comedians in there, not like actors who will throw their arms around you, darling, and make everyone feel at home. It's very much a kind of, well, this is my 15 minutes. You're doing yours. And to my horror, with a couple of them, I realized that, if you're at Jongleurs back in the early noughties, and people don't necessarily want your nicely observed old man, the 3-dimensional take. They want you to shout and swear at them and be like a teacher, sort of trying to take hold of an unruly class. And all the lovely detail you put in is slightly wasted sometimes on a very drunk stag and hen party. So it was quickly apparent to me that it's not necessarily the platform for Barry from Watford. Although it was not, 50% of the time it went pretty well. But in the end, I just had to say, this is not right. This is just not the platform. But I did a few gigs as Barry, and it was great to get on Steve Wright in the afternoon. And you're one of my heroes, of course. As we say, we're similar age. I don't know whether the kids understand that, but when you think about the household names that were Simon Bates and Steve Wright and Simon Mayo, and well, some of these people I won't mention, but
leave it there with the DJs.
I'll leave it there. Those guys, and so to be sat there in the studio at Radio 2 with Steve Wright opposite me, it was so thrilling.
I'm sure, yeah.
And he would sort of give me free range, and I would write this thing during the week, and we'd make a few little tweaks. But just wonderful. Loved it.
Lovely. Well, lovely to hear. And then of course this incredible journey that Phoenix Nights came along, that just went through the roof, didn't it? And I guess it changed your life significantly. Did that happen quite quickly, or did it take a year or two?
Oh well, when Phoenix Nights first came out, it had no effect on my career. I was only in it for about 5 minutes. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of people thought it was Neil Fitzmaurice because we look quite similar. We got a similar nose.
I did for a while. I did. Yeah.
People thought it was Neil. It's so irritating. And I think even now he gets people contacting him. But the thing that was really great was that in 2015, which is, 14 years after Phoenix Nights came out, and I'd played Clinton on a couple of things with Peter. One thing, the Jesus Christ Superstar. Do you remember that thing? You remember the X Factor parody?
Yeah.
So I played Clinton on that, and then we did Phoenix Nights live at Manchester Arena. And I would say from that moment, it changed things because Peter let me. He said, "Look," I said, "I really want to do this character on the comedy circuit." And Peter said, "I don't have any problem with you doing that. It's sort of his creation and Neil Fitzmaurice and Dave Spikey's creation." And they sort of give me their blessing. So thankfully, that is what really did it. And Peter lets me go out there. I always check everything with Peter religiously. I say, I'm going to do this. And, I've got another tour coming up, hopefully in 16 months, which I've got to approach Peter about. And I just hope that, he's going to be fine about that. But he's very, very magnanimous of him. Is that the word? To let me do it,
Yeah. There's a few connections. I did a little bit with Dave Spikey previously, and Ted Robbins used to run the local radio Lancashire breakfast show, and he did some writing workshops, which I was involved with, which were great fun. But of course, Ted fell ill, didn't he, on that tour, Alex? And that must have been quite a concern for everyone.
Well, I was sharing a dressing room with Ted. It was me and Steve Royal, Steve Royal, who does the juggling. And we were having a great time. And it was quite nerve-wracking because, being comic relief, there wasn't a lot of time to rehearse. We'd had a couple of days in Wakefield in some giant hangar. I'm just going to cough. Sorry, this tour is catching up on me. And so we turned up the next day at Manchester Arena and we suddenly thought, oh no, this is enormous. What are we going to do? We've barely rehearsed. Everyone was a bit shocked. Ted had just come back from doing panto. He'd not been that well. And he had to climb up a sort of step ladder thing to get onto the stage for his bit. There were kind of fire rockets going off. He had a bit of a sort of dance number at the start. It was all, it was quite energetic and I think kind of a bit overwhelming. And it was a real shock because we'd been in the dressing room before. And I mean, he'll tell you this, that he'd had a sort of premonition where he'd said to Toby Foster, if I collapse on stage tonight, I'm not kidding. Please do something about it, which was incredible. And Ted is doing some research. There is a school of thought that says that your body tells you that something is going to happen not long before. It just prepares you mentally. Something happens. And he sort of had this feeling that was going to happen.
Wow.
And sure enough, he collapsed. And, because we'd barely rehearsed, the cameras swoop in, just thought it was part of the act. It was a bit of a kind of Tommy Cooper moment. This is very to talk about. And his image collapsed on the stage, was 100 foot in the air on the great screens.
Crikey.
You could hear the sort of death rattles almost. It was just so shocking and terrifying. And people were still laughing, and people in the green room were laughing. And I immediately knew that something was wrong. And I remember Barbara Nice coming in, and everyone was very shocked, and it was all really, really distressing. And the audience sort of left very, very quietly. It reminded me of that Patrice Mwamba moment, the Bolton. Bolton, was he playing for Bolton?
Yeah, it was Bolton. Yeah.
Yeah, and where everyone sort of picked up what happened and was very respectful, and it was just silent as people left. And luckily, Ted survived, and he's a great mate of mine. We're doing this show in Rawtenstall soon.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing that really disappointed me, this sounds really glib and silly, is that before he'd gone on, we'd sort of gone through our words, our lines in the dressing room. I'll shut up in a minute, don't worry. And he'd said to me, he's going to do this line which goes, look at that lovely, that wonderful, that that jacket you're wearing, all your clothes, your whole outfit, madam, in the front there. If I ever win the lottery, I'm going to buy an entire outfit like that. I just need those 3 numbers to come up. I thought it was such a great joke. And he didn't do it. And I think he was sort of mind was in a, he was obviously delirious or something.
Yeah, yeah.
He thought, he's struggling. And he said something else which wasn't nearly as funny. And then with that, he sort of fell over. So it was it was awful, but I'm so glad he's still with us.
Yeah, me too. He's a lovely guy. He's a lovely
guy.
guy. He's much loved in this part of the world. I know that, definitely. Yeah. And then on from Phoenix Nights, there's a lot of questions, wasn't there, but why it doesn't return or why it hasn't returned. I know Dave Spikey always felt that there was a Christmas special maybe to be had. But what's your feelings about it now? Do you think there is mileage ever if it was to be talked about, or is it best left where it is?
I have absolutely no idea. And, rather selfishly, if they came back and I wasn't in it, I'd be so upset. The only thing I do think is I remember being on the stage, and at the end there was this sort of mock. No, it wasn't a mock thing at all, because we were raising money for Comic Relief. But there was a sort of cheesy charity video that happened at the end with Brian Potter, and at the end it came up Brian Potter, 1958. To 2015, and it was almost like that's it. I put a line under it, and I think that was the feeling from Peter, that's the end of it, and everyone's going to look around and went, oh, I thought, oh, that's it then, is it? And then he sort of said to me since, have the wig, have the costume, we're not doing it again, sort of thing. But I don't know. What do I know? I mean, I've never asked Peter that. I would love to do some more. I'd love him to do some more.
He's touring for the next 20 years, isn't he? I think I've got tickets for my 80th birthday.
Oh, I know, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know. I think people. I mean, sometimes less is more, isn't it? They always go on about 40 Towers and what have you. They just did those 12 episodes or whatever it was. But I mean, people love it so much, and I feel really honoured. I come up to the Northwest and to be a part of that thing, and I was only in it for flipping 5 minutes, so I'm eternally grateful.
Just a brilliant character, though. Just a brilliant character.
I think to be fair, it's such a British thing, isn't it? We love to see the cogs working.
Yeah,
we like the plucky loser. We don't really like the real heroes.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, if England lose tonight, if we win tonight, that's almost anathema. Losing is the national characteristic, and how close we came, and the bittersweet agony of that.
Yeah, and people who haven't yet seen the live show with Clinton and Ramon, just tell us a bit about that, Alex. Have the characters evolved, or are they as they were back then? What can people expect?
Well, in the podcast, I mean, I do this Clinton Baptiste paranormal podcast, and Ramon is Clinton's arch rival. It's slightly more adult than I've done before, but there's this sort of bitchy, catty, slightly camp relationship between the two of them. And it was so popular on the podcast. And when I did my last tour, everyone was saying, "Where's Ramon?" I'd get on stage to be shouting for Ramon. And so I've written this thing with Lewis and Brendan called Clinton Baptiste versus Ramon, where the two of them sort of go head to head. So I've always thought, how funny if two clairvoyant medium psychics get together and claim to be channeling the same person. I mean, how does that work? Which was the kind of premise. And so it's about them going head to head, but I want to assure, they get a bit sort of at each other's throats, but we sort of decided early on that there's so much misery around at the moment that, it ends nicely and they're friends. So it'd be terrible just it to be a sort of shouting fest, which it isn't, thank goodness.
Yeah. And Salford tonight, and then what's the plan to have a bit of a breather before you go again in the new year?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna Salford tonight, which would be lovely. The last one, 48 shows. I'm really, really exhausted, and there are more exhausting things to do, but there's something about the adrenaline, whipping up night after night and then whipping it up again and getting hot and sweaty and then going out into the cold and lugging the props to the car, that after a while takes its toll, particularly with someone like me in 54. So what I'm going to do is I've got a charity thing tomorrow in Newcastle with some really great comedians, which I'm honoured to be asked to do. And then I do have some gigs dotted around because I've got to earn some money for my tax bill. But I want to have a bit of a break for Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. Alex, how long does it take you to come down after a show? Are you kind of in the, are you wide awake till the early hours, or do you have a way to wind down after a gig?
Well, my friend Dan Skinner, who plays Angelos Epithemiou, he always says he just can't relax. I know that Lewis can't either. I sort of can after a while. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to sleep, but I'm not sort of bouncing off the walls and having to go and have a drink and hit the town. I don't know. I mean, I watch a lot of telly. I have a hot bath. Luckily, the Premier Inn chain still have baths. Some don't. Some hotels are just a
Stop
shower.
name dropping that posh hotel you're in.
And tea and coffee, little milk sachets. It's all here.
You're going to be telling us you've got an extra pillow next.
Yeah, it's good enough for Lenny Henry. It's good enough for me. So it's So I'm not too bad. I can go to sleep after a while. I'm obsessed with Twitter and Facebook and social media and TikTok. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
I've got to leave that alone.
At your age.
We're like us youngsters. Yeah.
Well, Alex, I've loved chatting to you. I love chatting. Comedy is my passion. I'm off to see one of your mates next week, Justin Morehouse, with a friend of mine, Tony Vino, is somebody who's done some stuff with us at church. So it's great, and I'm really glad you're well and glad you've enjoyed the tour and that your voice holds up tonight. You're a QPR fan, you said.
Well, the funny thing is, my uncle was deputy chairman of QPR back in the glory days, and we used to go a lot. I was there for the plastic pitch in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
And then I stuck a picture of QPR versus Wolves on the fridge, and my son, who was 7 at the time, went for the wrong ones. And now I'm a season ticket holder at Molineux. Can you
really?
believe it?
How interesting.
His middle-class mum went, "Oh, isn't that lovely? He's got his own thing." I said, "You don't understand. That's it now." And so now we're up and down the country to see Wolves. We're having a terrible, terrible season.
Yeah.
No disrespect to QPR, who I will go back to when the lad's older and he just wants to take his mates. But Loftus Road, though I love it, it's compact, is no Molineux.
No.
Black country raw. It's sort of proper, working class football. And there's just something about it. I really love the power of the play.
Well, I'm hoping the Clarets. I'm a big Burnley fan, Alex. I hope we replace Wolves in the Premier League and we beat Queen's Park Rangers, who we're playing today. So that would be.
Oh, is that what it is today? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
We're back in action.
Well, good old Burnley. I like Burnley, and of course, my Aidan went there and said the lovely thing is you can watch the cricket before you go in the ground.
That's right, absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant, lovely stuff.
Alex, lovely to meet you. Can you send us off in give us a bit? I love Barry from Watford. Say goodbye in the style of Barry from Watford.
Well, I just I say this. Thank you to the podcast for having me on, and it just remains, really, for me to say, no. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.